All right, so April and I are talking, and I was telling her about the Toyota Sequoia. And I did a video about the color of the oil on the dipstick. Today, we changed it, and I have abused this car the last 1,000 miles, right? And we had oil consumption at 4,000 miles and not 3,000 miles. But we have been driving the crap out of the Sequoia on the weekend.
Yeah.
Long distances and high rates of speed. So I was just telling her that when I pulled the oil stick, that your oil stick isn't going down to the bottom of your pan. Meaning the oil stick's not touching the bottom of your oil pan in any vehicle. It is measured or calibrated and set a certain distance to give you an accurate oil reading if it's not aftermarket or have been modified. So me pulling the oil stick out of my own vehicle, not thinking right, that it's not exactly 100% clean and it's not 100% dirty by the clarity. And clarity means something in your oil change, in your oil people. A lot of you guys out there think that I'm crazy. Well, watch the Oil Geek's inspection of his oil stick on his wife's vehicle, and you will see that what I'm saying is 100% true. Versus me pulling my oil stick on a vehicle that has near twice the mileage. His has 180, not near twice, but about 25% more mileage. I have 307 and he has 180. That my oil dipstick didn't have skanked on oil on it, because he goes 10,000 miles, and I will never do that with any of my oil changes. That, by me pulling the oil stick out, right, solids and things in suspension and fluids or oil, right, at the top of the oil, the solids or the heavies that are in it, right, are going to settle to the bottom of the oil pan, and then the suspension of those particles are going to sit in different levels of your fluid, right? That makes sense. So I stick my finger in a lake that has ice on the top. Hear me out, right? It's frozen cold, right? Mm-hmm. The water underneath is warmer and flowing.
Oh.
So oil, when it has solids in it and contaminants, has different stages of that in suspension. And that's ferrous, non-ferrous materials as well, depending on the solids, okay? And the heaviest solids are going to fall to the bottom. So by me pulling the oil stick out, it looked cleaner to me, although it wasn't new. And I could tell that it had deposits in suspension in the oil, but it was not black or even brown. It was tinted. So the oil was doing its job holding particles in suspension. But when we pulled the oil filter off, I seen a different color of oil that still wasn't dark, much darker than the oil dipstick reading. And that's where I changed my thought process on topping it off a half quart and going another 1,000 miles, and just changing the oil filter to saying, hey, I'm just going to change this oil.
Speed check reported ahead on
Because when we pulled the oil drain plug, the darker and heavier particles and solids were in the lower portion of the oil pan. It's gravity, right? The oil is holding what it can in smaller particles and larger particles, and it's not necessarily going to hold flakes of sludge and chunks, because that oil is not designed to do that. And at the bottom of the oil that was coming out was a darker shade than the oil on a dipstick. And then a bell went off in my head and saying, now I understand why the Oil Geek, giving him credit, says if you were going to take an oil sample, that you take an oil sample from the same position. So if you're going to take an oil sample from the top of the oil, you're going to continue to stay with that sample. If you're going to sample from the bottom, from the drain plug, you're going to continue to that, because your data is going to be different top to bottom. So the color that I saw proves exactly what he's saying, although I didn't have to send my engine oil out to say, I know in fact that oil could have went longer, but my mind and my brain and my skills said otherwise, that oil's cheap, engines are expensive, let's move on with changing the oil here, even though it had 4,000 miles on it. Whoa, we're in flood.
Are we?
Looks like. But so that made sense to me. So even when I pull a customer's dipstick out and there's no oil on the stick, that represents that there's no oil on the stick. But how sludgy and thick is the oil that's left in the pan? Much larger black deposits in the oil, and that's why the color is tar black, right? So there is a science to what is going on, and if you're doing an oil analysis, I will tell you that you probably should do top and bottom if you cannot analyze the whole entire oil. Thanks for watching.